So good morning. I am Randy Fiorini, the chairman of the Delta Stewardship Council, one of the agencies co-sponsoring this important event, and I would like to welcome each and every one of you. Some of you have traveled near, and some of you have traveled from faraway places to be here for this very important two-day workshop. It was in the mid-1920s that my father was a student here on the UC Davis campus. He came here in search of learning a new way to do things. Really, he came here to avoid having to milk cows twice a day. He joined about 700 other men on this campus. There were no women at the time. That's probably why he only stayed here 2 years. But during that time, he gained an appreciation for a new way of farming. And after 2 years of study at UC Davis, came home to the Turlock area and began instituting a move in the direction of planting wine grapes and tree fruits, which our family continues to farm this day. This campus has had a significant impact on my family. Water has always been a very important part of our life because of our connection to farming. And therefore, at some point, I became involved in water policy work and now find myself chairing Delta Stewardship Council, an agency that's responsible for coordinating the activities of some 200 other local, state, and federal agencies with regulatory or operational responsibilities in the Delta to ensure water supply reliability for the state and a healthy, restored ecosystem in the Delta region. It's filled with a lot of challenges, and oftentimes those challenges lead to frustrations. It was about a year ago, I was chairing a gathering of 16 other state and federal agency leaders, policymakers, and scientists convened to try and help coordinate better activities in the Delta. And I expressed a frustration, why is it that an area as important and critical to an economy as the Delta region is to California, that we don't seem to attract the same level of federal attention and funding for science that other key regions of the state attract? Well, that question made an impact on one of the folks at that meeting, Mike Chakowski, who was representing USGS. Mike called me a couple of days later and in good scientific fashion. He said, I understand the frustration. I understand why you're asking that question, but it's not exactly the right question. What we should be asking is, how can we better manage, finance, and communicate science? And he said the regions that were mentioned, the Great Lakes, the Everglades, the Chesapeake Bay, Puget Sound, Louisiana coast, are all areas where there are USGS representatives. Mike at that time offered to look into the possibility of bringing folks from those key ecological areas to California to have a conversation about how science is managed, financed, and communicated in those regions. Thus, the map, thus the workshop that has been created. Partnering with Mike and the USGS has been the Delta Stewardship Council, led by Jessica Law, our coordinator for the Delta Plan interagency implementation work, and the entire Delta Stewardship Council staff. There'll be more thank yous to come later, but I think you are all going to gain a great appreciation for the hard work that all of these folks listed on the planning committee in your agenda booklet, thanking them for preparing such a good venue to come and learn. It was surprising to me when we looked at the regions that we're going to be discussing today that 42% of the nation's economic output comes from those regions. 28% of the United States population resides, works, and recreates in these regions. So beyond the ecological importance, there is an importance to the nation's economy in these regions. Answering my question about funding science, which is so important, and decision makers such as myself depend greatly on being informed by best available science. You'll find it in your briefing papers. I hope that everybody has had a chance to look over the advanced briefing papers. If you haven't, there's some on the table out in front. But this gives you a snapshot into the average annual funding from state and federal sources for science activities in these key regions. The California Delta, the area that is of primary concern to the Delta Stewardship Council and many of you that are here, is a significant contributor to the state's economy. It's not only an important ecosystem that has been suffering, particularly native fish species have been suffering for decades. It's also a place where water is switched, or it's a switch yard or the hub for water transfers in California, supplying water to either most or some of the needs of 25 million people and about 3 million acres of California farmland. So what do I hope to gain from this proceeding? Well, we're going to hear from a lot of experts. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your willingness to share the lessons that have been learned about how to manage, finance, and communicate science in these key ecological regions throughout the United States. Out of this proceedings, we hope will come some recommendations for those of us in California that are struggling with how to better manage our systems here, and to then find a way to apply those recommendations perhaps as dramatically as the lessons my father learned here almost 100 years ago, moving from milking cows to picking peaches. So thank you all for your attendance, and we hope at the end of this proceeding there will be in fact some big news coming out of here. Thank you.